a wonderful speaker, Lenna Lou, who's going to join us and give a keynote speech on influential leadership. For this session, what we're really going to do is dive into, obviously, influential leadership. Lenna's on the screen now, and in a moment I'll invite her to join me on the stage and to take stage for the entire session. And really, what Lenna's background is and where she's been is she's done it all in the ecosystem. So Lenna herself is a founder with the L Factor, which I'm sure she'll talk about throughout her speech, but she's also a board advisor and a NED as well. So she really has a complete breadth of experience of board-level interactions and of what it really means to have influence and to lead those boards. So throughout today's speech, and I won't steal her thunder, we're going to talk about a lot of different topics, some of which will be about that specific transition, what leadership looks like as a C-suite individual versus a board seat, board member, board advisor, or a NED. But we'll also talk about the inevitable conflict that happens on the board. So there's lots to dive into, and I don't want to take any more of her time. So please join me in welcoming Lenna Lou to the stage.
Thank you so much, Will. I am pretty nervous. I've never seen so many people in the room, and yeah, it's an interesting topic to also talk about. So, Will has said a little bit about me, and I just want to go a little bit further. I am a board advisor. I am a non-exec director with Enfield, working with the Enfield Council. Very tough one, I kid you not. I'm also a NED in a couple of Asian boards. And I'm also a chair of Global Chambers, driving the advisory board in strategic directions, etc., etc. But I am better known as a professional nosy parker. And I'm very good at that. I'm certified enough, hence the professional part. And the reason for the professional nosy parker bit, well, I'm always intrigued to find out more about the person's aspirations, where they want to go, their experiences and background and skill set, etc. And that's what makes a mentor different. And I'm sure you probably need one on your journey. Absolutely. So you'll have to forgive me for that. Let's dive in to talk about influential leadership, redefining boardroom dynamics. But let's go into the topic to ask, how does influential leadership in an executive role differ from a boardroom? So it's all about the C-suite team, what they do, and what all the great people in the room who's going to be a board, non-exec director or board advisor, how does it differentiate? Well, I Googled that, and this is what they came up with. The main difference between C-suite group and the board is their objectives, scope of influence, and operational focus. So, as an example, influential leadership at C-level is about action, execution, while in the boardroom, it's about oversight, the strategy, and governance. Very important. So each of them, each team, requires distinct skills and perspectives that shares the ultimate goal of advancing the organization mission and sustainability. So imagine this, as a board level, you're no longer doing all the nitty-gritty work. You're actually, you and your team will be on a boat, sailing the ocean, avoiding all the waves, etc., helping that ship, really is the organization, to accelerate to the next level. So let's talk about a few strands that might impact this. Firstly, objectives and accountability. So for a C-suite, the focus is achieving business goals, driving day-to-day operations, making decisions that impacts the company's bottom line. And so their influence is more about driving measurable outcomes. That's what a C-suite does. But for a board level member, the focus will be on governance, strategy, and long-term sustainability. So their role is essentially to oversee the executive team, mentor them, guide them, and provide guidance rather than direct action, influencing through oversight policies and the strategic directions. Apart from that, let's look about the scope of influence. So for a C-suite, the role would be more internal operations, and they're more involved with the various departments and managing team, ensuring the alignments with the company objectives. So it's their focus and their influence, it's more about shaping the company and more involved with the employee engagement. Whereas with the board, their influence is indirect. They're working at high level and a broader view of the organization, mission, and vision. So they establish policies, define ethical guidelines, and shape the company's reputation. Their influence is mainly through governance, strategic priorities, and not quite the day-to-day employees' interaction. As you probably know, board meetings are usually either quarterly, monthly, and they get a full CEO report from the C-suite, and they go through that. What about operational focus, you may ask? Well, for a C-suite, it's all about detail-orientated, responsive to certain actions taking place, and also market changes and technical adjustments as needed. And also, they're more the doers and calculated risk and looking at driving growth. Whereas on a board level, they take a longer view. So it's not impacted in a month, 2 months, or 3 years, much, much longer. But also focusing on risk management and corporate resilience, sustainability. They also maintain a balance between supporting, please note this word, the C-suite and holding it accountable, but also guiding them, getting them more involved, understanding what their hurdles may be and how they can do, what they can do to support it. But what about decision making? You probably all know that. So the C-suite makes the decisions on staying competitive, adjusting their strategies based on immediate data and provide quick, necessary solutions when necessary. Whereas with the board, they engage collective decision. So it's not a one-person decision. As a board member, it has to be collective. And their approach is based on ethical implementations, regulatory requirements, and most importantly for a board, it's also the stakeholders' impact, whether it impacts the stakeholders as well. So let's also talk about conflicts at the board level. In my mind, conflict at the board level is a good thing. It's a necessary thing. Imagine this, you have a board with a variety of great people, different personalities, different backgrounds, different skill set. Naturally, when they come together, their skill set is the most important thing, and there's what they feel is most important. Like, if I was a marketing and I was on a board, naturally marketing would be the most important thing. And in some sense, I think that's important because you get the marketing expert on the board, you also get the client journey, specialism on board, you also get the finance on board. It's a really good thing. But, so let's understand why conflict is inevitable. Like I said, difference of opinion, organization leadership. Board members often represent different stakeholders. That's also very important. And each with unique interests, experiences, values, which can lead to clash on viewpoints. What do I mean by that? Well, this includes diverse expertise and opinions. You may be very, very good in a certain area, which is fantastic, but somebody else might have a view about certain other areas. There's also, what about the strategic priorities? Maybe marketing should be taking the lead in a certain volatile market. Or should it be the finance? Or could it be looking at your customers? These are all very important, but you also need to think about all of them together. Also, what about high-stakes decision-making? So discussions on board level can impact the organizations and its stakeholders, increasing the likelihood of passionate debate. So, recognizing these reasons are the foundations of handling conflict effectively and embracing a vital part of governance. So I want to also address the kind of conflicts that you might have on a board level. These include task conflicts. Should we do marketing first, HR first, etc.? We also look at about relationship conflict. Oh, I don't quite like him. He's, not quite going to the same direction or goal or value as me. And also the process conflict. When we go through a certain process, it should be a cohesive one. But sometimes it could be sided, too one-sided or too multi-sided, that we don't have the full focus, which is wrong. So, I wanted to put this specifically in, is about the benefits of conflict in decision-making in a boardroom level. So it's all about when you have different voices on a board, it helps with a different viewpoint and highlight potential risks and new opportunities. So if we didn't have an expert in marketing, imagine all the things that we missed out on, etc. So we also, I think, when you have conflict, you also have innovation and creativity, because you want everyone to be cohesive into managing that vision of the company. So that's also very important. But most importantly, when I was, well, I am still the chair of a board, I believe that it strengthens the board cohesiveness. Every member has a voice. They tell opinion, and then it should be a cohesive decision how we can move it forward. So, my finishing point about this is about don't avoid conflict entirely. Boards should aim to foster a culture where differences are aired openly, respectfully, and constructively. So, I've got a few strategies here which I've learned along the way. So a structured approach that promotes respect, open mind, and shared purpose. That's how we can get the board conflict into a productive discussion. So how do we do that? Well, we should establish clear communications channels. So if something becomes too heated, take it offline and address it. You should also set group rules. Nothing about, oh, I don't like her shirt or I don't like his trousers. Nothing like that. There should be a set of rules that you should adhere to when you work together. And also leverage a neutral facilitator. That, in essence, is usually the chair. They have to remain extremely neutral, not be sided into one way or the other, and that's where the conflict usually is resolved. Last but not least, focus on constructive debate. Don't focus on some grievances, etc., what you heard. More, what is the best for the company or the board moving forward? And that's also important. It's really funny. Some of my mentees are male and some of them are female. And I find it really interesting, because I didn't realize that actually male have imposter syndrome as well. And so when I have a group of females and we talk about imposter syndrome, and they say, oh, it's a female thing. And I said, actually, no. There are male out there who has imposter syndrome. It's just the way they deal with it. They have a drink with their mates and then that's it for them. So does anybody in the room, sometimes, because I have it, imposter syndrome? Ah, well, we found the right topic to talk about then. So, imposter syndrome is quite a word that's been around, and I thought I'd do a little bit of research and sort of think, well, what is it that's imposter syndrome? And it's a good thing that you've got imposter syndrome. Let me tell you why. So, what is imposter syndrome? It is often described as self-doubt, insecurity, or the feeling that you are faking it despite having the qualifications and skills and experience in your role. It can lead to anxiety, procrastination, missed opportunity if left unchecked. But the good news is, if you have imposter syndrome, it's usually common among high achievers. So you're really a high achiever, a perfectionist. So, apart from that it's important to recognize your value. Embrace growth, because if you don't try new opportunities and new things, you won't learn. But also, don't be a perfectionist. You can go into a role and say, I'm going to be really, really good at everything. No. I remember when I was in Enfield, and we have quite a lot of gentlemen in there, and I think very few ladies. And a lot of the gentlemen will talk about things, etc., etc. And when I firstly went in, I didn't say much. But when I say something, all of them listened. So it's not a matter of how much you participate or what is it that you participate. It's take the angle that what you say, no matter how small it is, it's just as important. It's a view. And rather have that view so that the board can actually think about it, look at it, than not saying anything and the board misses that opportunity. Think about it. So, I wanted to address this imposter syndrome because I wanted to tell you a couple of things that it says here. Every board advisor is selected for a reason. Your expertise, your perspective, your unique background, and all of your strengths. Your skills, experiences, tools that you have accumulated throughout your career brings you to that position now. So, let's think about and talk about practical strategies to overcome imposter syndrome. And I think a lot of you know already. The first one is prepare and study the business landscape. Do a bit of research on the company, the market trend, the sector that the company is with, and the documentations, gain insights on what's at stake. Speak to your network. There might be someone already in that sector that could be helpful to you. Embrace a growth mindset. Very important. So, as I said, no one's perfect, but if you just have that little recommendation, that little comment, it could make a huge difference to the board perspective on moving things forward. And you've learned something new. And this is, if anything else, this is the most important part. Get a mentor. The reason being is, get a mentor and also speak to other advisors. So a mentor helps you provide guidance, share their experiences, and help that feeling of doubt and see what you can do about it. But also, speaking to other advisors help into understanding organization cultures, different dynamics, and build that relationship moving forward. It could be of mutual benefits. as I said before, focusing on what you can bring to the table rather than being perfect. Nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes every single day. I kid you not. I find that when my mentees tell me, I've done this today, I always say, yes! Celebrate small wins. It's an amazing feeling. You said something, you did something, the board accepts it, thought it was fantastic, celebrate it. It's a really good thing it's that feeling of, yes, I did that today. I don't know about you, but it helps me, and the mindset sort of saying, I should go along this trend. It's going to be really, really good. And also, it's about mindset. So, build a supportive mindset. So, I try to do that in the boards that I'm involved with when I am chair. But board should value diverse perspective, reinforces the idea that each member's voice matters, contributing to this culture by validating other insights and fostering openness is key to amazing and a good board. I just have one more topic I want to talk to you about. Some of you may be involved with companies that are growing. And when they're established, they're nice and small, they have a nice tight team, and when they grow, sometimes the dynamic and the culture might go out of the window. You, as a board advisor or non-executive director, it is your job to keep that element of culture intact. Why? For the employees, so that they know what is supposed to be good. For new hires, and also, more importantly, to keep the leadership team intact. Very important. When the leadership team is looking at a multitude of things, that usually goes out of the window. So, when you look at the importance of culture and values in growth, there's a couple of things that I like to remind you. Think about the shapes of the company identity. Influence employee engagement, customer loyalty and brand reputation. And when a company scales, the structure changes, you have new hires, and that could dilute the core essences of the culture. So, what should the board do in a scaling culture? So the board has responsibility in scaling culture by providing guidance, strategic directions while making processes by setting clear cultural expectations, particularly in leadership and strategic matters. Leadership team tends to look more on the bottom line. Your job is to keep them intact and sort of say, no, we also have to look at this as well. Set clear cultural expectation, particularly in strategic matters, but also support the leadership team in cultural stewardship. Encourage executives to prioritize culture as a strategic asset. It's very important. Embedding culture in governance. I find that this is so important in the governance aspect, and I use it a lot in that sort of sense, because it mitigates risk, opportunity, and also with board discussions and reporting. I find that extremely useful. So, strategies for maintaining values during growth. This can be done by evaluating cultural fit. So when you get involved with the HR department and give a clear indication when they hire, what are the KPIs that they should be looking for. Also, aligning with onboarding. Once you've recruited them, it's important to onboard the new recruit in the specific area. And also ensure that it's a comprehensive onboarding. So it's not one-sided, only one department, etc. Also include culture matrix in performance. So that includes measuring and rewarding cultural alignment, importance of value within the company, And also, the board should always encourage leadership integration, cultural matrix like defining cultural KPIs, incorporate culture in regular reviews, encourage transparency and open communications, support open channels for feedback. A lot of the times the new recruit have fresh perspective. The company's been doing something for a long, long time. When the new recruit comes in, they have a fresh eye on things. Ask them, what is it you find works? What is it you find doesn't work? Have that open communication. More importantly, as a board member, please lead by example. Don't say one thing and do another. It's so important that you are in line and cohesive with the leadership team. And demonstrate cultural alignment on board conducts and engage in self-reflection and board evaluations. So, self-reflection is more about what have you done so far, how has it been, etc. But also, it would be nice to get feedback with your fellow board members to see what does good look like. So I've bored you enough. I want to hear what you feel. Do you have any questions? Great, no questions. Uh-oh. Yes.
You mentioned you were talking about.
I don't have another one. Oh, there is another one. I'm so sorry.
Slide up on the button.
Hello. You were talking about conflict and the fact that conflict is a good thing on boards. You have a lot of diversity, typically speaking, on the board, etc. So that will typically generate the conflict. The flip side of that, because of the diversity and, as you say, perhaps some strongly held views in different places, different members of the board, I would imagine that a way to help manage that, because you were talking about you really need to get to a consensus decision for things to move forward. I would imagine that a way to do that might be to apply a kind of lens that you look at the problem through and say, okay, does this solution satisfy these aspects looking through this lens, so that we can. Have you come up with some strategies for doing that in the past? How have you done that in terms of managing the conflict to consensus decision?
That's a very good question. Thank you very much for asking me. I think what I usually apply is, what does good look like for the company? So, whatever the company might be, there could be fantastic, talented teams on the board that are very passionate. And I'm a very naughty chair because I usually let them speak their mind, have that discussion, and then I usually draw it to a close, because if it's too long, we'll never get to the agenda, we won't follow through. And what I usually ask is that whichever perspective we take it, if we can't find a consensus, where does that leave the company? Because is it the core thing that the company is growing, and therefore we need elements of it? And in order to get there, what's the best solution to it? And usually, when you look at what the core value it is that you're trying to achieve, usually everybody's on board into addressing that. And I love your solution about looking at it through a specific lens. So, I'm a marketing person. How do you feel on the finance side, and whether that numbers fit? But sometimes it's just too many dynamics to that. So maybe I'll try the lenses. But I think it's at the end of the day, it's the result of what benefit is it to the company. That's how I would drive it.
Thank you for your speech.
Thank you.
Quick question. Where in your long history and experience
I'm not that old,
have you got it absolutely totally right by throwing your weight as the chair on, let's say, the left-hand side? And where have you got it totally, utterly wrong, where you wished, with reflection, you could have recast your vote?
If I may say so, I had the opportunity of choosing board members on my board. So I got it absolutely right by choosing the right board members. Diverse background, diverse experience, ethnic minorities, etc., etc. I think that was really, really good. How did I get it really, really wrong? I looked at the background, I looked at the characteristic, I thought it was a cohesive board. Sometimes there are bits of personality conflict that you just kind of think, oh no, she's going to talk again, we're going to talk about this again, etc., etc. And it's mitigating these personality traits. For me, it's the personality traits that is the hardest to navigate. When it's anything to do with finance, marketing, results, etc., piece of cake, easy peasy, you know. We all have the talent, the people in the back, the knowledge that they have, the accumulated tools, toolkits that they've accumulated around that board, really fantastic. It's the personality element that sometimes gets in the way. For me, I can't say it for everybody, but that's my perspective. You had to ask a question, didn't you?
Hiya.
Oh.
Now, a quick question for me that I think you know the answer to already, but I think could be quite valuable for the room, is that once you get a NED role or an advisor role, and it's pro bono, what's some of your recommendations to flip that, to monetize it or to be paid?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's Cohen, one of my ex-mentees, and of course he would ask that question. The idea of getting a pro bono work is getting the experiences to be a board, a non-exec director or a board advisor, right? So don't forget, with a non-exec director, you are liable. If they've done something naughty, something with the finance thing, you are liable. But as a board advisor, you are up there on the board, but you still have the ethnic part that you have to deal with. With the pro bono work, choose something that is out of your sector. If you're in finance, don't choose a finance company, choose something very different. The idea of the pro bono work is to expand your knowledge, expand your skills, and look at something totally different. With your unique skill set, experiences, etc., go for it. How do you flip it to something on a paid work? Well, that's between you and the founder. I have had mentees who've worked on a pro bono work for about 6 months. The founder likes them, think they're absolutely amazing, and gave them equity. And I always say to the mentee, if you find that this is the sort of company you want to work with, go for it. But it has to be something that you benefit. And flipping that, it depends on the company you work with, depend on the journey you're with. It's so many facets of elements that you can do, but absolutely, it's something between you and the company, how you can see it grow as that board member, level advisor. And if you believe in it, I'm sure magic will happen at the end of the line. Do you have a question?
Yes, do I have a question?
Oh, I think there's a mic.
Thank you for the overview. So you talked about the boards and the role of the board and the chairman are to be focusing on the longer term vision of the business, sustainability and so on. In some of the startups, the board can sometimes be made with investors into the business, people who have a direct interest into that business. And how do you drive the board to think more long term if those individuals have more of a shorter term view of spinning their investment, exiting the business, getting their return, and therefore they're not necessarily aligned to that on paper perfect role that they should be doing?
The advantage of being on a board, like I mentioned before, is the various stakeholders, and absolutely you'll have investors on board. The investors, as you rightly put it, is actually, I invest in you, I put this money in, I want to have a return of investment. What is your exit plan, etc. But more importantly, what investors are looking for is that in that period that they invest in, how are you going to grow it, etc. So when I mean long term, I don't mean 10 years later and you're still sort of doing it, etc. You're looking at, and honestly, with the current business environment, you can't even tell what's happening in 3 years, let alone further down the line, etc. The idea to entice the investors to be on board and look at that long term is how their investment will be doing. Whether that platform will be scaling, there'll be more, they'll probably get some sort of return, interest on an annual basis. They might be very happy with that. It's better than putting in the bank. It could be elements of, they might have equity in it and then seeing how it could be selling their equity. There's a multitude of ways to look at it. In essence, the company and the mission is the core element. The investors is just a partner, part of that journey. If that makes sense. Do I smell pizza? Oh.
We'll take a couple more questions if there's much.
Hi, thank you. Hello. It's not uncommon for organizations, whether it's the board and the C-suite, the team that works well, starting everything, faces different dynamics when we're talking about expansion during Series A, Series B stages. I'm curious what your experience is as a member of a board during those phases in getting the board to basically reassess or look at the C-suite to go, you were good enough to get us here, but for the vision that we, the board, have going forward, are you still the best ones for the chair, and how you've navigated those types of conversations with the board? Thank you.
Thank you. It's a really good question. Sometimes the C-suite can take a company to a certain stage, a certain level, and then in order for it to grow further, they may have to step away, step aside, etc., etc. This is where the board needs to have a good conversation with the C-suite. They've driven it so far. You need to appreciate what they've done and their aspiration, etc. Sometimes that skill set, that knowledge, that drive may not get them to the next level. It could be an element of getting a co-CEO to sort of complement the skills that they have. It could be an element of seeing if they want to carry on that or whether they want to step away. I've got a few times where, I'm part of a board in Asia, and it's so fast moving, really, really fast. And the C-suite has the drive. He's very good. He gets them from A to B very quickly. But when it gets to a level where it needs to stabilize, really have the processing structure, and really grow, he's just not the person for it. And it was a very difficult conversation because, he's very good. It was his baby, his vision, his mission, everything was aligned. And then it took a bit of time, whether, to sort of see whether they can stabilize, do it, etc. And usually they find out from themselves, unfortunately, sort of like, maybe this is not for me. I need to hand it over to somebody else to actually grow it. Or I'm going to take a step back and then have somebody else go even further. It's a matter of personality, but it's a very tough conversation. I don't recommend it.
I'm interested to know that many founders, many of those may not have had C-suite experience of a sophisticated business, and therefore they may not be, excuse me, very familiar with governance.
Mm.
Is that a conflict, and how would a board advisor go about dealing with that?
As a role of a board advisor, the first thing is to see whether they are the only advisor to that company. And in that sort of sense, there's a minimal structure in place, but not quite governance per se. But when you have more than one person as an advisor to the company, I always say it's best to get the governance in place, the structure in place. Even though how minimalistic, how it is, have it there. It's something you can build on. It's something that we don't have an argument. You said this, you think this, I think that. It's a matter of having that alignment. This is where the company is going. This is the infrastructure. This is where we're going. It's always good to have some basics in place, I think. Is that it?
Ladies and gentlemen, we have time for one more question if there is one. Otherwise, we do have pizza ready, so we can forgive me. I will try fast.
Yeah.
Hi.
Thank you for the speech, madam. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for attending. I really appreciate it too.
So, I've not been into any roles of advisory before, but I've worked as a consultant and I'm still working as a consultant. So, how do you kind of restrict yourself going forward with too much of advice, and how do you track yourself growing as an advisor in an advisory role?
So sorry, let me just get in my little head right. Are you a founder or you're trying to be an advisor, firstly?
So, I'm an aspiring board of advisor.
Okay,
So, when you join a company and you give them advice
yeah.
from your expertise, is there a threshold where you need to be aware of how much you can advise and where you need to stop advising?
You know, I'm sure you will. And the reason for that is, when a founder comes to you for advice, and you rightly put it, some of these founders don't have that corporate background or corporate mindset, etc. They come to you because they need your expert advice, whether it's marketing, etc., at that sort of level, at that high level. Your job is to advise. Do not, I repeat, do not get involved. The reason being is you need to step away, have that clear vision, that bigger picture to look at. How much advice depends on the situation. If it's very lost and sort of like is focusing on marketing, finance, etc., you might need to become a mentor or coach to him and sort of say, okay, calm down, we need to do this first, then this, etc., and then set him on his way. But limit your time with them because you don't want to be taken advantage of. It says, oh, he's really great, he's my advisor, I'm going to speak to him every single day, etc. That's when it's just too much. Limit your time, set boundaries as to when you're available, when they can contact you, set the agenda of what you want to talk about in that meeting, etc. And go about that. Don't let them divert, because I find that a lot of founders say, oh yes, I know we talked about this, but I've gone to this. Let's address this first, let's solve this problem first, and then let's go here. In some sense, you need to be the guiding light of these people who probably need a lot more help from you, but it's also a matter of your time. Your time is very precious as well.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Do you have time?
Do I have a choice?
So, with every job, I think you have KPIs and how people are measured. So how do you measure an advisory role success?
Sorry, every role that you look for has KPIs, and you want to know what good looks like.
What is the KPI for an advisory role? How do you measure success of yourself as a board of advisor in an organization?
Okay, so as a board advisor, your KPI is to set the strategic directions of where the company is going. it's a tiresome role because you're looking at the future, you're looking at the forefront, you're managing a amount of stakeholders, and also you're managing the C-suite at guiding them, seeing where they go, etc. Your KPI is, if you can have the culture intact, ensure that the company is going the direction that it should, I can actually congratulate you with a bottle of champagne there. It's a never-ending story. Today it's about addressing a certain business environment. Tomorrow it could be something else. It's a never-ending job. But it's also the fact that some board, you will find, only lasts for about 3 years. The reason being is that it should be an ever-evolving thing, that, you know, you've had your stint with them, you've had a viewpoint, you've worked with the team, etc. We now need a fresh perspective to go into that. And that's important as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll just do one last question and then we will...
What happened to that very last question?
I promised the last question. Thank you for the chat explanation. It seems to me that a lot of what you talked about is about group dynamics that could apply to any organization in any groups. And I have a doubt, and actually a question to you. I mean, all the clients, the boards, the groups here are small companies, very small companies. Now, personally, I have had exposure to corporate organization only. And as you can imagine, no one has too much skin in the game. Nobody has their own funds. So I wonder whether your chart is how relevant it is to the dynamics of small, very small entities vis-a-vis corporations, and whether the group dynamics could be the same or it's very different. That's really my dilemma, my question.
It all depends on how small that company is. So if, in some sense, you have a board advisor, there's only one, well, ta-da, you and the founding member, you need to sort of work things out. However, if you have more than one advisor, so someone who comes in as a finance advisor, someone who comes in as a marketing director, there already is a different viewpoint because it's different sector, helping that company grow and move forward. And some of these small companies may have that. They may have more than one advisor, and it's a good thing because then you can establish a board. But some of them may prefer to have one advisor, which I need to talk to Will about this and set him straight and says, yeah, we need to have more advisors on a specific company in that sense. Simply because with a different viewpoint, with a different angle of expertise, etc., it could help strengthen that company to grow even faster. And most of these companies you will find, well, I found, is that they're always looking for investment, right? I think about 90% of them are. And I'll tell you a little secret. I am secretly an angel investor as well. So I have also looked at the investment side and looked at these companies and spoke to them. And they're very, very disorientated is the word I'm going to look for, say. Why? They come to you, they say, oh, we're doing this, we're a really great platform, blah, 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 etc., etc. But the one thing I find that differentiates the companies that I've spoken to is that if they have a board advisor on their deck or within their team, I think there's a bigger chance that I will invest in them. Clarity, structural, have an essence of goal-minded, where they're going, etc., etc. So that board dynamic advisor is so important to a small company, but we need to fix it with more board advisors there.